Okay, this is Fukushima. So I'll just briefly go through it. They built 6 reactors. And what they did was, there was a cliff, but they excavated the cliff to build the reactors at sea level. Behind the 6 reactors is a mountain range, and water pours down from the mountain consistently under the reactors and out to the sea. And when the reactors were intact, that was fine. But what happened was, there was an earthquake. And they lost their external power supply that supplies the pumps to circulate 1 million gallons of water in each of the 6 reactors. Now, because of that circumstance, they put big diesel generators the size of a house underneath the reactors so they switch on and keep the pumps going. But then in came the tsunami, and it drowned the diesel generators. They were so desperate, the men were running out, getting batteries from the cars to try and keep the pumps going. Well, within 3 hours, 3 reactors, units 1, 3, 2 and 3, started to melt down. Because this uranium is so hot and full of these radioactive elements, so hot, it turns into molten radioactive lava, and it melted its way through 6 inches of steel in the reactor containment vessel, down onto the floor, concrete floor, and almost certainly we think it's melted its way through the concrete floor into the earth. And do you remember the China syndrome with Jane Fonda and Jack Hawkins? Yes, the nuclear industry call that the melt through to China syndrome, because it starts going into the earth. Now the problem is that the water is still pouring down from the mountains, and it pours over these reactor cores, and the water becomes radioactive, very radioactive, and that goes into the ocean. So for 4 years, every day since Fukushima, 400 tons of radioactive water are going to the Pacific. Tons. There is apparently, the nuclear industry never predicted anything like this. They don't know what to do. They can't get near those radioactive cores, because if a man stands there for about a couple of seconds, he'll get radiation illness and die. One spent fuel rod, if you stand next to it for a few minutes, you'll get radiation sickness from the gamma radiation coming off from it, right? So, and they send robots in to try and work out what's happening. The robots get fried. It's going to be radioactive like that for hundreds and hundreds of years. And there's no way to stop the water coming in from the mountains, dissolving the radioactive elements, and the water's becoming more and more radioactive every day. So what happens is that the algae bioconcentrate cesium or whatever by orders of magnitude. Then the crustaceans eat the algae, same thing. Little fish eat the crustaceans. Big fish, tuna, eat the little fish, and then there's us. So they're already finding fish, tuna in California with Fukushima radiation in it. And it's going to get worse and worse. Now, the Pacific's a very big body of water, and of course the radiation gets diluted, but the solution to pollution by dilution when it comes to radiation is fallacious because of bioconcentration in the food chain.
Over 20 species now are near collapse. The halibut, the herring, the salmon. Not only did the salmon not come back last year, I think it was 80% of them didn't come back, but the young salmon that were born when those that did come back went up their streams of origin and were able to produce baby salmon before dying. The baby salmon, when they go out to sea, are dying en masse. And these imbecile, no, they're not imbeciles, they're cowards. These cowardly marine biologists will not say the R word. They say, well, something's causing acidification. There's a virus. They're lying. They're not telling the truth. No one will say it could be related to the radiation that's being dumped into the ocean around the clock for over 3.5 years now. They won't say that. I salute some of you folks in Alaska who are involved in the fishing industry, it took the fishermen up there to demand that the fish be tested for radioactivity. Not all the captains, just a few, but some did. And they found out what they suspected was there. Radiation bioaccumulating in the fish. Remember, 80% of the salmon didn't come back last year. We just got word the salmon, the babies, which were coming down out of the mountain streams where they were born into the salt water, were dying. What's killing them? All right? One captain said, this is the worst fishing he has ever seen. It's a catastrophe. Crabs, by the way, up there have turned blue. The herring, the cod, halibut, pollock. He said that the catches are literally dropping off a cliff. There aren't any. They're gone. They're dead. Prove me wrong. They're dead. They didn't migrate down to Chile. They're not hanging out down there, having a good time. They're dead. This is the death of the biggest ocean on the planet, the greatest catastrophe. Japan should be held fully accountable. So should General Electric. So should Toshiba or anyone else involved with this nightmare. All of them.
Subcontractors too that service. TEPCO's just an umbrella company.
Of course.
All of the companies that actually provided all of the technical and other support were all American companies, basically.
Yeah, a lot of the crabs being caught in Alaska, they're all dead. They bring them up and they're dead. So I mean, this is not a joke. This situation in Alaska, which was the breadbasket for fish and seafood, you're looking at right now, ladies and gentlemen, the death of seafood. In fact, it's dead. Look at I'm sorry to say this. Look, I don't eat meat. I don't believe in it. I don't touch it. Well, what's the name of the chain? Red Lobster? They're toast. They're going to have to start advertising that their fish comes from the Atlantic or they're going to be out of business. It's just going to happen.
Or the deep South Pacific if they're coming from Argentina. What happens is all these oceans are connected. Now, what people should understand is what happens if you let this continue to spin out over, say, the next 5, 10, 20 years. Even if nothing else happens, no war starts, no economic collapse, no thinning of the ozone layer that kills the crops and starts forest fires and destroys the oceans. So we're not even going to add other factors. What the first thing happens is weakening of what we call herd immunity. And it also increases the rate of mutation. So if you have someone in Japan or that's exposed and carries, say, a version of, say, the H5N1 or H1N1 or H7N9, the new Chinese or Asian superflu, that virus is going to be, because the host is under stress and has a free radical load, is going to mutate at an exponentially faster rate.
Right.
So we don't even need a bioweapon lab. The bioweapon lab are literally the carriers, the people and the animals now exposed to these things. So you could have viruses emerge from the ocean. You could have viruses emerge that have the human receptor binding domain that are in people, populations that are now exposed to the radiation.
Get any worse. And this is why, because it ends up leaking into the ground, getting into the ocean, coming up out of the ocean, coming down in precipitation. And the bottom of the food chain, the plankton, the phytoplankton, it's in it already. The zooplankton, it's in it already. So you end up going through the food chain and we're up on top.